Even if you tried, you wouldn't understand it. Maybe something's missing inside of you. Just a bit of sugar to that horrid bitter.
Hey everyone, my name is Sophie from Sophisticated Organization. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm going to do an extreme fall meal prep video. I'm hoping I have enough energy to do all of this because it's pretty ambitious. I have like a snack, a side dish, a full main dish, some bread that I'm gonna make, because what else makes me think of fall other than some warm homemade bread, and a dessert recipe. So tons of different things in here, lots of fall flavors and different cozy food items. So if you're ready for it, let's get right into the cooking.
'Cause I don't believe you when you say that you miss me. 'Cause where are your actions to prove me you're different? When I say I need you and you head the direction that's leading away from me, baby.
So let's start simple here with the snack that I wanted to make first, and that's the homemade oven baked apple chips. Now, this recipe is beyond simple. I try and put the recipes on the screen so you can kind of follow along and walk you through all of the different ingredients and how much of everything I add and the steps and everything like that. But with this recipe, I'm not even going to put the ingredients on the screen because it's that simple. You can make these apple chips with a knife, but if you have a mandolin, it's going to make it a heck of a lot easier. You're going to get a much more consistent bake on your apple chips. So it does help if you have one. Definitely make sure you use that instead of a knife, but you'll still be able to do it with a knife. So you will want to gather all of your apples, give them a nice good wash, and then start to cut them as thin as possible, about 1/8 of an inch. My mandolin has 1/8 of an inch setting, so again, it was really easy. I just slide my apples back and forth and create those perfect little round circles. Now, you can core your apples if you want to. You don't have to. I find that the seeds kind of fall out or bake away, so I don't waste my time with any of that. So I just slice them straight away with the skin on and everything. Then I lay my apples on a baking sheet. I just used some silicone pads there so that they didn't stick to the baking sheet. And you're gonna wanna make sure that they're in a single layer, not overlapping with each other so they can actually crisp up. You'll sprinkle on some cinnamon if you want cinnamon apple chips. If you want them just regular, you don't have to sprinkle on the cinnamon. And then put them in a 225-degree oven for about an hour. Flip them over, stick them back in there for another hour, maybe two, depending on how crispy you want them. Take them out and you have a super healthy, delicious snack. Next up is one of my favorite recipes that I make all the time. It is such a crowd pleaser. We love having it for tons of different meals, so that's why I thought it would be great to kind of meal prep in advance, and then we would have it when we wanted it for warm curry dishes and other stuff like that. So I'm going to add in my 2 teaspoons of dry active yeast, a teaspoon of sugar, and mix that in with 1/2 cup of warm water. Once that's all nice and frothy, you can go ahead and add in your 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 cup of olive oil, 1 large egg. And if you see me adding more ingredients than I'm saying right now, I did double the recipe. But if you want to just do a regular batch of it, stick with what I'm saying and what is on the screen. So after you have that egg in there, you'll add a 1/3 cup of plain yogurt. You can use Greek yogurt here. That works great. I do Greek yogurt all the time, and mix it all together.
So put your hand in mine, I will be there every day. When you're sick of the climb, I will make sure it's okay.
Add in your first cup of flour and mix that in nice and good. And then you can continue to add more flour as you go, but it's helpful to kind of incorporate it a little bit at a time. 1/2 cup at a time usually works until you can't stir it with a spoon anymore. So in addition to your first cup, then you should add about another cup and a half. Once it's looking like it's mostly combined, I get my hands in there and start working it in the bowl and start kneading it in there and get it into a nice ball shape. It should be smooth and soft, but not really sticky anymore. You can loosely cover your dough and let it rise until it's doubled in size, which should take about an hour. Make sure it's in a pretty warm place, not too cold. And then after it has risen and doubled in size, you can take it out on a nice floured surface. And if you're just doing the regular batch of the recipe, you're going to want to cut it into 8 slices. So I first cut mine in half. Then I'm going to do my 8 slices, but again, I'm making 16 because I doubled it.
Every day I got your back, and you can count on me for that. So put your hand in mine, I will be there every day. When you're sick of the climb, I will make sure it's okay.
The fun thing about these naan breads is you don't have to worry about perfect circles. I just roll them out until it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. And for some reason, I find that it helps if you don't roll them all out at once. I don't think they get the same bubbles if you roll them all out right away. So I kind of try and go back and forth and back and forth. And so you'll see I have a cast iron skillet. That's what I like using on about medium heat. I put it on one side, let it cook up until I start to see bubbles, flip it over. I add some salt and parsley and butter to it, and then take it off and switch and put the next one. So it's just this constant flipping and adding the toppings on the naan. Sometimes I'll do a garlic butter and brush that on. The only thing about the cast iron is it can start to get pretty smoky if you are cooking a lot of these, and I find it just overpowers the kitchen. So I try not to cook too many or take too long as I'm doing it, or else things get a little bit smoky in the kitchen. So again, you'll see once I put a naan on, then I head back over and go back and roll more out, and then head back and keep flip-flopping. But here is the final product. Time for some pumpkin pasta with crispy sage and ricotta. This recipe was kind of fun, very fall, very festive. Sage really makes me think of fall, and of course that pumpkin flavor. So I'm getting my pasta boiling in some water. I just did a rigatoni, and then I bought some spicy sausage that I'm adding to mine, but you could definitely skip that if you want it to be more of a vegetarian recipe.
Tastes different. Hold up, baby. I can sit beside you while you're going on about your simple life. Nothing left you thinking.
Once I got that sausage out of there, I added in 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter with 4 tablespoons of flour and cooked that in a saucepan until a thick paste was formed, and then added in 3 cups of whole milk. Get that nice and incorporated and let it cook for about 10 or so minutes, stirring it to make sure that milk doesn't burn or anything like that. But you should see that the mixture thickens up enough that it can coat the back of a spoon. Then you'll take it off of the heat and add in your 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, half a teaspoon of salt. Mix that up a bit, and then you can add a 15-ounce can. That's just the regular normal size of pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie filling or anything like that. Just the pumpkin puree is all you need.
Hold up, baby. I can sit beside you while you're going on about your simple life. Nothing.
So I've drained my pasta. I'm going to add in the sauce to it, mix it around, and also add in my spicy sausage that I got until it's fully incorporated.
Your ego, your undying ego. Oh, look here he goes.
So that's the base layer of our pasta. Then there's going to be a topping that we're making that's cheesy and going to make it extra creamy and delicious. So you'll need 15 ounces of ricotta, half a teaspoon of salt, a quarter teaspoon of ground pepper, 2 large eggs, 3 garlic cloves that are minced. I'm mixing that up and then going to chop some fresh sage because you'll need 2 tablespoons of that to add into the mixture that we just made. And then you'll reserve some more for the top of the pasta bake as well.
Couldn't face the truth that maybe you're just not that nice and humble kind. That would be a lie. Go on, blah.
Once your ricotta mixture is made, you're going to add in a first layer of that pasta to the bottom of your baking dish. And then you can just kind of add in little clumps of the ricotta throughout. Top with another layer of pasta, repeat with the ricotta mixture, and then also add some slices of fresh mozzarella on top. Now, the nice thing about this that makes it something that you can prep in advance is this pasta bake. You can easily prep this entire thing, put it in your refrigerator, and then pop it in the oven when you're ready. So you could make this the night before, early in the morning, and then have it for dinner. Just don't forget to add a little bit of unsalted butter with some sage leaves into a saucepan. Let that cook up and add it on top as some crispy sage.
Even though there's overdue, we had a fire. Now we're watching it burn low. Isn't it time we go our separate ways? Not enough time.
Time for a side dish. Another easy one to prep in advance is quinoa. So I added a cup of quinoa with 2 cups of water and cooked it according to the instructions. And while that quinoa was cooking, I grabbed a pound of mushrooms and started slicing those up nice and thin. So let me know your thought on mushrooms. I know this is really strange, but I kept about half of the mushroom stems and discarded the other half. I don't mind them too much, but sometimes when there's too many stems, it's just kind of off-putting to me. So I did about 50-50.
Losing my pride, but I guess that's what love do to people like us, struggling to come through. We had a fire that we watched it burn out.
So once those were thinly sliced, I added some olive oil to a skillet with my mushrooms, 5 cloves of garlic. This is nice and garlicky, half a teaspoon of dried thyme, some fresh salt and pepper, and mixed that up and cooked it until everything was nice and tender.
My body and mind, my body and mind. You feel like demons in my mind, demons.
Add your mushroom mixture into the quinoa once it's done cooking. Stir it to combine it, and then I added in some grated Parmesan. You can do about 2 tablespoons, but you'll see I definitely didn't measure. The more Parmesan or the more cheese in general, the better. And so I just dumped the rest of it in there because why not?
Demons pushing on my triggers. Demons pushing on my triggers. I'm acting surprised, but I know I'm not over.
Time to get fancy with dessert. This one's probably jumping the gun a little bit because we're making some pumpkin cookies, and you can choose to completely follow what I did. This was a recipe I grabbed from Half Baked Harvest, one of my favorite places to grab recipes. I did end up cutting them like jack-o'-lanterns, and for September, that's probably a little preemptive for something that's a holiday at the end of October. But you'll see I started to make the cookies by adding 1 1/4 cups of brown sugar, 3 sticks of salted butter, a tablespoon of vanilla extract, and then beat that all together in my mixer.
Demons pushing on my triggers.
Once that's evenly combined, you can start to add your 2 eggs, mix it up again, and then begin to add your dry ingredients. So that's going to be 4 1/2 cups of flour. Don't dump that all in at once or you're going to have a complete flour explosion, but a cup at a time should be good. So I'm adding all of that in there, and then I'm going to add in the rest of the dry ingredients. So a teaspoon of baking soda, teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ginger, a quarter teaspoon of nutmeg, and a half teaspoon of salt. And even though there are a bunch of those really fall type flavors in there, it almost tastes more like a snickerdoodle cookie. So if you choose not to make these in the shape of a jack-o'-lantern, it really doesn't feel too ahead of the time with fall if you're not quite ready yet, because the nutmeg and stuff is pretty minimal. So it does taste more like a snickerdoodle with some chocolate, which you'll see in a little bit. With the dough done, I grabbed my favorite rolling pin. This is perfect because you can adjust it to the exact thickness that you want your dough. In this dough, you want to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. So I just selected the correct size and then began to start rolling that dough out. Then I started cutting my cookies using a pumpkin cookie cutter. You can make these cookies whatever you want, but I think the pumpkins are really cute. I used a pumpkin cookie cutter, and I'm making half of the cookies just plain with nothing cut out of them, just with that cookie cutter. And then the other half, I'm going to use a small paring knife and cut a cute little jack-o'-lantern face on it. And we'll have some milk chocolate melted in a little bit. And you'll see once they're baked and I combine the whole thing together, it's kind of fun because that milk chocolate peeks through and oozes through the eyes and through the mouth. So it does add a little something extra when you have those cutouts, though it was extremely tedious because I was trying to have little teeth on all of the pumpkins. It kind of took forever. As you're going though, you will want to add your cutout cookies into the freezer for about 15 to 20 minutes before you bake them. So it was kind of okay that it took me a while to cut all these out because I was working in batches. So I would put some in the freezer, go back to cutting, and then switch and put the ones that were just in the freezer in the oven and then continue cutting. And being pregnant, I probably should have pulled up a chair with all of that bending over and stuff and working on those little faces, but I sucked it up and made all of those cookies. So the first batch came out of the freezer and I loaded them up onto my baking sheet, again with that little silicone sheet so the cookies don't stick, and put them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 12 minutes is I think what I ended up with. You want them to be just slightly brown. Transfer them over to a wire cooling rack and then continue going and making sure you have an even number of tops and bottoms of your cookies.
Living in the past, we're over that. I'm feeling it tonight, riding on the dizzying heights.
In the meantime, I took 2 tablespoons of salted butter and kind of browned that in a little saucepan, which will help with our cinnamon sugar coating. Also got 12 ounces of milk chocolate melted, and I just used the microwave to do that.
Sunsets, remember the colors, they were wrong. It was way more than a dream. We climbed up, over the hillside.
So look at that giant stack of cookies. It's time to combine everything and make these into little pumpkin sandwiches. Brush the top of your cookie, the one with the jack-o'-lantern face, with that browned butter. Then sprinkle the cinnamon sugar on top. So the browned butter makes it so that the cinnamon sugar will stick to the cookie. Take your bottom part, which is the part that doesn't have the face, it's the full cookie, give it a nice, generous dollop of that milk chocolate and press the jack-o'-lantern face on top. And you'll see that, like I said before, when you sandwich them together, if you have enough of that milk chocolate mixture, it'll kind of ooze up through the cookie and looks super cute, and it's delicious. Again, like a snickerdoodle with a milk chocolate sandwich, it is an awesome recipe. I would easily make these again. That being said, if you do make the jack-o'-lantern faces, know that this is a time-intensive cookie.
There's no going back to your old life. Not living in the past, we're over that. I'm feeling it tonight, riding on the dizzying.
If you end up having any parties this fall or something, this would be a fun cookie to bring to a Halloween party or a fall themed party or something like that. Or you can just enjoy them at home, maybe not worry about the little faces as much, but they are definitely cookies that will impress. Look at all of that delicious food. It's all perfect for fall. I tasted all of it as I went. I love the cookies, can never go wrong with naan bread. That pasta is delicious and not too pumpkin-y. Apple chips are a go-to for me, and that quinoa mushroom side dish is going to be perfect for a meal this week. So if you liked today's video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, I will see you guys later.